5 million naira penalty on Channels TV for breaking the broadcast code during the appearance by the Labour Party vice presidential candidate, Dati Baba Ahmed. He appeared on Politics Today on Channels last week and said something to the effect that because of the irregularities that marred the election, there should be no inauguration of the president-elect. And that a lot of people view that as inciting public disorder and could be treasonable, and they've been calling for all manner of calling for his head. And the NBC has now come out and said Channels, by allowing him to have said that on air, that they violated the broadcast code and they have slammed them with a fine. There is some accusation of double standards. Femi Fani-Kayode has come on air and said worse things. Bayo Ononuga online has said worse things. Festus Keyamo, in his combative mode, has come on air. So is the NBC being selective? Is the NBC, does it have its own agenda? Is it partisan? Has it become political? Is this fair for it to have singled out Channels for sanction?
So for risk of us being sanctioned.
Thank you for being considerate.
Yes, this is really interesting. So the broadcast apparently was said to have been volatile and capable of inciting public disorder, and therefore violated some sections of the broadcasting code. Now, I haven't read the entire broadcasting code, but from a layman's perspective, and let me speak as a layman here, I certainly was not incited by the comments, and I suspect that, well, there were, like you did allude to, there were some Nigerians who felt that it was insightful, but then there are many others who also were not triggered by these comments. They were simply comments in line, like sort of following on from our previous conversation, in line with grievances that we all already know have been publicly aired several times and are now being followed through the court processes. So personally, I don't find these triggering, but the censorship body for the media, who sort of has the authority at this point and who knows best, has felt it, deemed it necessary to sanction Channels. We haven't heard from Channels media. At least I didn't find anything. It would be interesting to hear what their response is. There is a possibility, yes, of seeing it as double standards, given the examples you raised, but it would be interesting to hear from Channels what their perspective is.
Yes, indeed it will. What comes out of all of that is that regulation is subjective, because at the end of the day, how do you determine who you want to sanction and who you didn't want to sanction? Because as Fabia has rightly said, some people felt it was inciting, but a large body of other people thought it wasn't. And if the law is ambiguous and is subject to interpretation, then it's subjective that the regulator has to be the one to determine what is inciting and what is not.
If I can just add to that. So the law can be subjective, but ideally it shouldn't be. There should be examples, tried and tested cases, precedents that you can refer to, such that the laws are meant to be reasonable, so that the reasonability test is passed. So we can make judgments from that, and sometimes laws are abused.
Yes, and in such an instance, then we don't have these allegations of double standards and witch hunting and partisan interests and things like that. All right, yesterday, what do you have next for us? Something about fuel subsidy, I see. That's in the news again. What's happening with fuel subsidy?
Fuel subsidy removal. Labour threatens to mobilize workers against Tinubu government in June. The Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, have said that they will allow the removal of fuel subsidy only if the incoming administration of President-elect Bola Tinubu takes steps towards the repair and revitalization of government's refineries and allows modular refineries. The Buhari administration has stated that it will hand over the implementation of the petrol subsidy removal and palliative measures to the incoming administration. All yours, Dio.
Well, the Buhari administration dropped this hot potato and said, this one is not for me. I leave it to you, the incoming administration. I'm not going to deal with the public opprobrium and uproar of being the one responsible for removing this subsidy. Especially not after the Naira redesign debacle, the fuel scarcity. This government doesn't want to have to deal with public anger, so they're passing the buck to the next administration. Before I come to you, Fabia, let's watch a couple of interviews we conducted with everyday Nigerians to get their take on the impending removal of fuel subsidy.
Concerning the rumors about the fuel increments, I think personally it's getting out of hand. So basically, it affects everything we do. So as a businessman, day to day, I'm seeing increase. It might not be directly because sometimes transportation, people want to come on set, people want to go about, get equipment and different things, and everyone's complaining like the prices are outrageous. And you can't blame the transport guys. Like you have to know that it's coming from things like this, the fuel increment. So if it's possible, we keep it the way it is or go lower. I hope that works because it's really an impact on us, it's an impact on our family and then people around us. So please keep it safe, keep it here. We're trying. It's okay for now.
All right. So concerning this rumor of increment in the fuel price, I mean, looking at the environment and the country, and there's a lot of pressure. So adding that to that pressure right now is not the best for now because there are a lot of disadvantages, there are a lot of inconveniences, there are a lot of troubles, pressures that this might bring about. And look at business owners, generally every sector is going to be, they're going to feel it. Transportation, frustration, and you see cars queuing up to get fuel, you know, movement problems and all of that. So then the farmers and everyone is gonna feel it.
All right, Fabia, it seems to be generally there's a consensus that subsidy must go. It's how it goes and what is done to cushion the effect of its removal. That is the key, the million-dollar question. We're hearing rumors that fuel will cost anywhere from 400 to about 750 naira at prevailing market rates when the subsidy is removed. The million-dollar question, of course, is how are Nigerians going to cope? NLC has said, fix the local refineries, the government refineries. If you fix them, then we avoid transportation costs, we avoid clearing costs, all that kind of cost. And that should keep the price down. Government, for some reason, hasn't been able to fix with all the turnaround maintenance and all the money thrown at the refineries. They're still inactive, they're still moribund. Government seems to have a problem with that. So there are other palliative measures being considered, things like government buses, transportation, making things a bit easier, salary increases, things like that. But how do you see this notion of fuel subsidy removal as it relates to the well-being of the average Nigerian down the road?
Right. Oh, wow. So I'm with the people, I'm with the voice of the people. Generally, if we're going to be moving in this direction, like you said, there should be some palliative measures, there should be the cushioning effect, and it should be well thought out, proper strategies, which is what the Labour Congress should also be doing, rather than threatening strikes. I don't think that strikes is really the answer at this point. And as we saw from the voice, Vox Pops,
Yes.
This is certainly not what Nigerians want. Coming out from all the various dramas that we've had, like you said, Naira redesign, coming out of elections, we really do need a period of stability and some just allowing us to breathe. So I think what the next administration should be thinking about as they take over is really, like you said, around palliative measures and really thinking through the strategy properly. And the Labour Congress should be on the table, on the side of Nigerians, having these conversations for us. So I remember, I think it was during Jonathan's government, probably in the last days of his government, when we had a town hall where seemingly the opinions of Nigerians were sought en masse, and the pros and cons, because these things need to be explained to us, right? These things need to be, Nigerians are reasonable, so obviously nobody wants to suffer more hardship. Nobody wants to pay more if it's not absolutely necessary, especially in a country like ours,
Yes.
where we have, just gone through so much hardship. And there's really no reason to have, to be putting us through what we are going through as a people.
Yes.
So yes, repairing the refineries is certainly should be on the table. It has been on the table, and your guess is as good as mine why we are still where we are. Okay. But I think it's not enough to just make demands, and
Yes.
if this demand is not met, then it goes in the other direction.
Right.
Right? We know that strikes can work. We see what's happening in the UK, for example, with the health workers' strikes and
Yes.
the transportation workers' strikes.
Yes.
But the most important thing for us, from where we sit, is effective real-time strategies and really carrying the Nigerian populace along. Let's have another town hall, which we, like we had all those many years ago. Let's explain for those who were not part of those conversations, because we've been having this whole threat, of subsidies for as long as we care to remember. So let's have a conversation about it. Let's carry Nigerians along, and let's arrive at strategic solutions that will, sort of ease the burden for us, if that is the direction that we have to go.
Very well said. So the incoming government, over to you. You heard Fabia. Let's have a conversation.
You heard me?
Yes. Let's have a town hall meeting. Let's discuss this issue before it is put on the table, and let's have well thought out strategies that will mitigate the impact of this fuel subsidy removal on the average Nigerian. We're running out of time. Yetunde, over to you. What's the next thing you have for us?
Igbo leader who threatened to invite indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, to Lagos is in DSS custody. In a now viral video, the self-acclaimed Eze Indigbo of Ajao Estates, Lagos, Chief Frederick Nwajagu, issued a threat to invite members of the proscribed IPOB to secure the property of Igbo people in the state. Arrested in Lagos by officers of the Nigeria Police Force, Nwajagu was subsequently handed over to the DSS, who handle terrorism matters. He's slated to be transferred to Abuja for investigation and possible prosecution. Over to you, Dio.
What do you make of this, Fabia? This has befuddled me ever since it came in the news. What do you make of this, this gentleman threatening, well, can I even call him a gentleman, threatening that he's going to unleash IPOB on Lagos markets to protect the assets of Igbo people? This whole Igbo versus Yoruba tension and strife that has emanated in the aftermath of the election. What is this all about?
Right.
Why is it happening?
And I think, Dario, that's really what the issue is. So I was going to say, on a lighter note, DSS seems to have their hands full, in this past week, and we're hearing a lot from them. So, well, good work to them, or kudos to them for the work that they're doing. IPOB, for all intents and purposes, has been declared a terrorist movement, and clearly the alleged statement by the chief, by Eze, is possibly insightful, so I can understand how this can be seen to be a threat, to peace, and so warrants full investigation. But like you said, the drumming of this whole tribal and ethnic sentiment has really come to a head during the elections, and I think that now that at least the Lagos state elections are over, and we have our governor back in the seat, mediation, peaceful settlement and resolution of this brewing conflict, I think, benefits no one. And I think that it should be a priority of the government of Lagos State to wade in and ensure that whatever tensions are building are resolved peacefully and timely. Lagos is a metropolitan city, just like like New York and London. We pride ourselves on being ethnically diverse, and it's the different cultures that bring vibrancy to the city, and historically has been so in Lagos. So I think that we really should nip this in the bud, and just nip it in the bud so that it doesn't begin to escalate. And of course, where there is insightful conversations, let that be dealt with properly.
Thank you very much. And so heal those wounds. Time to heal those wounds and hug our neighbors and hug our neighbors and love one another, and bury the past in terms of all the electoral differences we all had. All right, that's the much we can take for this edition of What's Your Take. We had a whole bunch more stories to cover, but we've run out of time because we had so much fun. So thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you, Fabia Ogumekon, for being our guest today. We look forward to having you again. This has really been engaging, and I wish we had more time to analyze a whole bunch of the stories that covered the headlines this past week. So to all of you out there, we wish you a great week ahead. My name again is Dayo Akintobi. Thank you for joining us on this edition of What's Your Take. Have a good day and a fantastic week ahead.
Thank you for coming, sir.
Yes.
I was expecting the noise.
Noise.
The siren and everything.
Can't I have a break even for a few hours from this silence as well?
Now I see why you want to come back here now.
Yes. You can see this place is more friendly, isn't it, than Abuja?
Wow. So how much do you miss it when you're not here?
Well, very much so. That's why when I come, I keep my eyes very wide open. As it was the first time I'm coming. This fruits are bearing trees are growing very fast. Yes.
So you're counting the days now?
I am counting the days, not even the months.
What amazes me is that if you know him now, to me is the same Buhari I knew. 1953. He's a good listener. He will accommodate you, listen to you, and he will never fight back.
If you are not hardworking, if you are not honest, if you are not dedicated to your duty, don't come near Mr. President Buhari. He has a very long face, but you have to catch up. He looks after the welfare of his staff, especially his close aides. He makes sure everything is well or is fine at home front because he asks questions. That's how is everything going on? And whenever there's anything, he takes your problem as his own problem.
The ordinary people are his friends. And then Kaduna, you come and see them in his sitting room. They are not only in the sitting room, but they are on his dining table, eating with him.
There wasn't any day you go to Sultan Road #1 that you will not see people queuing, and that he will not attend to you.
When he goes to his farm, the only thing you will know that he is not with them is because of his white dress and height. He mingles with them. When we're going to the mosque, we enter the normal place where other people are and join the queue from where we find it. We don't overstay our queue. And normally, during Christmas or Salah, the father buys a dress for his children. And from 1996, when I started working with him, up to this year, he will buy me Salah dress. Every Salah. So along with his children. So I'll have my own children, my own Salah dress.
When my mom passed away, we were going to hold a commendation service for my mother in Lagos, and I just sent out some cards. I sent one to his house in Kaduna. Lo and behold, on the day an SUV just drove into the premises of the hall, and I went to welcome whoever was in it. When they opened the door and I saw him, I was shocked. So you could make it? He laughed. And he stayed with us throughout that service, a Christian service. A man they used to call a Muslim bigot. He stayed throughout that Christian service. It was one of the things that convinced me that the man was not who people were saying he was.
I first met him in 2007 because they were trying to meet pastors who could also, and not only pray along with them, but who could identify with him to remove the toga of Islamic fundamentalism, which he has been labeled with for too long a time. I saw him as a forthright person, an incorruptible leader, and one that was ready to bring about discipline to our society.
He's a very self-effacing person, also very witty and humorous when he's comfortable in the environment he is. He can be surprisingly shy when he's not comfortable, he's amongst people who he's not accustomed to being around, and he can live in his own skin and say very little. But when he's comfortable, he can be a pot of good humor.
I got to know him from about 1976 when he was the Minister for Petroleum. And I was working in the presidency. You know, he has this expectation of people to take their responsibility seriously. He gives you an assignment, he expects you to carry it out.
Mr. President.
President Buhari, you go into his office, see him reading, let's say, a memo. You not even notice you are there. He puts in his 100% on that memo until after he reaches the end of what he's reading. He does not even know somebody is there standing.
We first met January 1953. Buhari, as a child, was quiet, humble, and reserved.
There's one thing I also learned, that you lost your father very early. How was that growing up?
Yes, well, it was a difficult time. I didn't know my father, so I was an orphan, which means I didn't enjoy the protection of a father. I didn't know my father. And I went into a boarding school for 9 years. 3 of the primary school and 6 secondary school. Yes, I miss my parents, but I was lucky. We were a generation of lucky people.
His father passed away when he was 4 years old. His father had 3 wives. Muhammad was the youngest of 23. He had sort of surrogate fathers throughout his career, including within the military and including within the school system.
He was brought up by his senior brother, who was a teacher. He is one of our teachers. So he had a good home training under the care of his senior brother.
President Buhari is my uncle. I'm his nephew. My name is Amandaura. His mother, Hajia Zulehat Musa, is my grandmother. Her first child was my father. Her last child was Muhammad Buhari. My father was his guardian, but it was tough for him, but tough for us also. Life was very tough in those days. You went to school in the morning, you came back and you go to the bush, collect firewood for the night reading. We had no lamps in those days. We used firewood to light, and we had slates, which we wrote chapters of the Quran and read. And so you have one chapter, you read it during the session, and then tomorrow morning you wash it, and another chapter or a piece thereof is written and you learn it by heart.
So when I was away from home, I think I was constrained to behave myself because there was nobody to rescue me. So I was behaving myself. As I said, I became a class monitor, I became a junior prefect, I became senior prefect, I became a head boy.
You know, boys will be boys. You will transgress on occasions. You'll be late for school, refuse to attend lessons sometime, go out to play, and that will be severely punished. Whoever did that will be punished. And the teachers were, I wouldn't say harsh, but they were disciplined. They taught us discipline. If you transgress, they lash you.
There was discipline in schools then. There's corporal punishment. And I think to a certain extent, it molded the minds of the children and so on and so forth.
Our generation was very lucky. Our teachers were absolutely committed and dedicated. And they treated us like their own children. If you do well, you are praised. You are brought before the classroom, your work was shown and you are praised. If you don't perform, you are again brought before the classroom, stripped and flogged on the buttocks. And there is no way I can forget school, because what we call the teacher I see there, called Malam Abdul, is a very strict person. And he doesn't spare the rod. We call it Bulala. Really. We don't like the rainy season approaching because we have to go to school farm. You wouldn't be late there, just like a classroom. And if you are late from 6 to 2, Bulalas on your buttocks. And you have to remove your shorts so that you get the message proper. Among the teachers, I could only